The smiling mother sat on morning television promoting her self-published book about helping children cope with losing a parent. Her husband had died the year before, but authorities say that death was no accident. Kouri Richins was found with lethal levels of fentanyl in his body. Prosecutors allege his wife, Kouri Richins, purchased the drugs and slipped it into his drink. They point to financial conflicts, secret property transactions, and alleged prior poisoning attempts. In May of 2023, she was arrested and charged with aggravated murder, the image of a grieving author colliding with allegations of a calculated homicide. Was the book an act of healing or a move investigators say masked something far darker? Tonight, we have all the big moments from the courtroom as prosecutors try to prove where Kouri Richins obtained the fatal drugs. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. This hour, our continuing coverage of the Kouri Richins trial that everyone is now watching out of Utah. This all involves a poison drink, perhaps a Moscow Mule. Maybe it was a lemon drop. Maybe it was both. I don't know. The jury's got to figure this all out, right? So Kouri Richins died from a fentanyl overdose, and prosecutors say it all came from a Moscow Mule that was prepared by his own wife, Kouri. Okay. So they're saying Kouri is the one who took the fentanyl pills, smashed them up, put it into the Moscow Mule, mixed it up, and then served it to her husband for various reasons. But there's a question here, right? It's fentanyl, it's a drug, it's a lethal dose. So who sold the fentanyl? How did Kouri Richins end up with the fentanyl that she allegedly used to murder her husband? And this is an important question. And this is such a significant part of this trial because we know that he died from fentanyl. The question is, how was the fentanyl delivered? How and why did he take it? Is he someone who's battling with this awful back pain? Is he someone who is hiding these pain pills all around the house? He's buying the stuff off the streets, went down to Mexico and purchased it. And maybe, just maybe, like many other Americans, unfortunately, he bought something with the intention to relieve his pain, and it was laced with a lethal amount of fentanyl, and he OD'd, right? So you've got to set this up, because you've got to prove the case as a prosecutor beyond a reasonable doubt. It's almost like a chain of custody. How did the fentanyl get in the Moscow Mule? Kouri Richins put it in the Moscow Mule. Well, how did Kouri Richins get the fentanyl? Well, they're saying that the housekeeper sold it to Kouri. So Kouri's got a housekeeper. Goes, can you get your hands on some of this stuff? I don't know where to go to get this, but obviously she knows that the housekeeper does for whatever reason, and why you would hire a housekeeper who knows where to buy drugs, I don't know. You want them wandering around your house with your 3 little kids? Okay, that's your choice. But apparently she did, and she's testified that she did know where to get this. But she's not like a drug kingpin. She's not the local dealer. She's someone who, I guess, at some point was a user and knows other people who were using drugs. So people who use drugs have to get it from somewhere. So again, you're building this chain of evidence that prosecutors need to convince this jury, because a jury could get hung up on that. Like, I don't even know where she would get the fentanyl. They didn't prove that to me. I need to know. So this is extremely significant. So the supplier, another important witness and person in this chain of delivery, the fentanyl from the dealer to the distributor, to the wife, to the Moscow Mule, and then into Kouri Richins. Let's take a listen now, because this is significant cross-examination, right? On direct, you say what you're going to say. There were some issues, but now it's the cross-examination of the housekeeper. We're going to listen to the supplier later, but let's start with the housekeeper, Carmen Lauber.
Initially, they were the ones that told you that Kouri asked for fentanyl, correct?
I don't recall. That's what they said to me.
yesterday when you were testifying, we talked about this.
They told me Eric had passed away from fentanyl and overdose.
And we talked about that it was the detectives that possibly put the word fentanyl in your head. Do you recall that?
Correct, yes.
Because they are the ones that told you about the fentanyl, correct?
Correct.
All right. And in this interview, you're telling them you're worried because of all these possible charges that you might get, correct?
Correct.
And Detective Maynard says that the goal is to convict Kouri for aggravated murder. These parallel drug investigations, those aren't a priority. Do you recall that?
I don't recall.
Carmen, isn't it fair that you really don't have a memory about what happened in February and March of 2022?
What do you mean by that?
Well, when you were interviewed in 2023, you didn't remember what had happened, correct?
Correct. It's a lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in. And you didn't remember it a year after the fact. So you really don't even remember now what happened in 2022 and 2022, correct?
Rephrase your question, that kind of confuses.
You didn't remember in 2023 what happened in 2022, and you don't now remember what happened in 2022, right?
Yes and no.
It's been laid out for you by someone else, correct?
Due to data and cell phone data and everything, yes.
All right, so whatever memory you have is what was, you don't have a personal memory, it was shown to you.
No, I have partial memory.
You have a partial memory.
I have memory, yes.
All right, fair to say your memory was better 1 year after the fact than 4 years after the fact, right?
It is confusing later on, years later, yes.
Okay. And you were using and selling that whole time in drug court?
I was not using and selling the whole time.
The whole period we're talking about of February and March of 2022?
Yes.
Kouri never once asked you for fentanyl, correct?
No, not correct. I mean, yes. Wait, you confused me. Can you ask the question again?
Kouri never asked you for fentanyl, true?
I had told her that that's what Robbie had, and she said, okay, go ahead and get it.
All right. Let me ask the question again. Kouri never asked you for fentanyl, true?
Yes.
And you haven't done any time for any of the crimes that you committed, correct?
Correct. I was incarcerated. I stayed in jail for 23 days.
Well,
that's it.
23 days when you were arrested in April of 2023. Yes. And it was during that time period you were in jail because you were getting your story together with Detectives Maynard and Detective O'Driscoll.
Yes.
Okay. And the pills that you bought from Mr. Crozier, you don't know what those pills were, correct?
He had told me that he had fentanyl.
You didn't look at the pills, correct?
No, I didn't sit there and play with them, no.
You didn't know what they were, correct?
Correct.
You didn't have them tested?
No.
Okay. You didn't take any, you said?
No.
Correct?
Correct.
You did or you did not sell them to anyone else?
I did not sell them to anyone else.
Okay. You don't know what happened to those pills, correct?
I don't know who picked them up, if that's what you're asking.
Right. You don't know who took those pills, correct?
Correct.
And you have, sitting here today, absolutely no information about what happened to Eric Richins other than that what you were told that he died of a fentanyl overdose.
Correct.
And you have no idea what happened the night that Eric Richins died.
I do not.
And you have no knowledge if Ms. Richins killed Eric Richins.
I do not.
All right, so is this undermining her credibility? Is this putting this in a place where the jury's like, she's just saying whatever police want her to say? Let's bring in our think tank. Joining me, criminal defense attorney Josh Colesrud. Also with us, former law enforcement officer, host of the Strong Enough podcast, Claudia King. And finally, entertainment host Holland Reed with us. Great to see everyone. All right, so, I mean, this is like a simple credibility call as we watch her on cross-examination. Josh, why don't you start off the conversation, your thoughts about whether or not she's holding up, whether she's credible, or whether she is just saying whatever police are telling her to say, like she's a mannequin on the lap of police here.
You know, the defense has definitely thrown some darts today that hurt. But, we all know that this person is a drug abuser and an addict. And I don't think it's very hard to believe that she was slinging some fentanyl here. So when you have a poison case, the most important thing to really consider is access. Who had access to the poison? And the defense have put all their cards on that one question, because if the jury believes that this person sold or gave fentanyl to Kouri, it's game over. They don't have to really consider anything else. So, it's a dangerous move for them to do that. So how do you determine if she's telling the truth? Well, in any he said, she said case, or she said case like this one, you look at corroborating evidence, right? So what's corroborating her evidence? Well, we know that she was communicating with Kouri during the time of the murder. Also, you have the dubious check, right? Right after the victim's death. And then finally, you have the toxicology report that he died from fentanyl. So those three things are so important. I feel like the defendant is going to have to take the witness stand to explain that check away.
Go ahead, Claudia.
Yeah, I totally agree with Josh on that one. When we deal with witnesses like this, drug users, drug dealers, they're not the moral beacon of society. And I think the jury gets that. They know that they're not going to have the most honest, wonderful, moral, ethical person up there on the witness stand. And so it does come down to that corroborating evidence. And as long as the prosecution can tie these things together that this witness has spoken about, it just gives credibility to her story. And I think that's where Kouri Richins is going to have the problems. And as Josh said, I think she is going to have to testify to put a lot of this information to rest, or try to convince the jury that nothing this lady said was true.
And I'm going to jump in from the viewer's perspective, which is why I'm here most of the time, is because we are dealing with so many facets of this. We're dealing with, okay, is she a mule? Is there a power dynamic with this couple? They have a housekeeper. Why would you have a housekeeper as an addict? But then you're also using that housekeeper to bring the drugs into the home. Was she a user that did not have a memory, that ordered the wrong drug, which she said on the stand and actually admitted to, saying, hey, I don't know what I ordered, but they said that that's what I got, then that's what I got. So there's so many layers to this. And does that make her culpable, right? Was she a witness to just being in a power dynamic where she couldn't say no and wanted to keep her job? Or was she someone that really was participating in some bigger, conspiracy drug situation, which I don't think she was. She was, for me, honestly, credible on the stand, watching her as a layman going, well, she's saying all the things and admitting all the things, but she got immunity. And why did she get immunity? So there's a lot of, I think, hand-to-hand things that are at play. But at the end of the day, what does it come down to? Did she know that she was providing the fentanyl, or was she completely unaware because she is a user? This is why I'm here. Honestly, this is the made for crime TV drama that we have to see play out, and we're seeing it play out in real time.
Now, there's one little fact here that was thrown into this whole thing. It's kind of strange. You can call it different. You can call it amusing if you want to, but I think it brings a level of credibility to her story. And her story is that Kouri Richins asked her for the Michael Jackson drug. Like, if you're just making stuff up, why would you say that? Why would you say she asked for the Michael Jackson drug? To me, that makes no sense. So let's take a listen to how they dealt with this issue on cross-examination.
Ms. Richins, on the second time, asked for the Michael Jackson drug, correct?
Correct.
And you told Ms. Whistler that you had to Google it, correct? because you didn't know what it was,
Correct.
and that you discovered it was propofol, correct?
I don't recall if that's what I remember, but
Well, you said yesterday that you discovered it was propofol.
okay, yes.
All right. And you can't buy propofol in the streets, correct?
I'm not sure.
To your knowledge, can you buy it on the streets?
No, I don't go around asking for it, no.
Okay, that's
not
fair.
that I recall if you can
That's
or
fair.
not.
Like, if you're just making things up, why would you make that up? That's weird. But I could see how someone who's not necessarily in the middle of the drug world, but kind of knows and maybe watched a little bit of the trial. Oh, yeah, Michael Jackson died from some drug. Like, that's what we know that drug for, Claudia. That's why, to me, this little fact, as strange and as off the beaten path it is, to me, reeks of credibility.
It absolutely does reek of credibility because, like you said, if she was making all this up or if the police were just feeding her information that they wanted her to say, they would have given her an actual drug name and not just the Michael Jackson drug. And I think that it plays into her personality. You know, she's not familiar with all these kind of other drugs that might be available. And I think that made her come across very human and very honest about that particular thing.
And I got to dive in here on the as I got to jump in, Vinny and Josh and Claudia. And to Claudia's point, that's not a drug. First of all, Michael Jackson did die of an overdose simply because he had a drug pusher that had the title MD behind his name, and he died because of overdose misuse of the drug. We also have Prince, who died of a fentanyl-laced drug that he requested through someone that he knew. So it's the idea of salt and sugar. It comes down to trust. Did this couple trust their housekeeper drug dealer to get the drugs, or were they just, unbeknownst to her, she was not in the headspace to get the proper drugs? And I think that's what it comes down to as well. But the fact that Vinny, you're absolutely right. The fact that she referenced the Michael Jackson drug, which is not a drug that a regular user of any kind could get readily available to them at a street corner or what have you, is very, very, very credible to her saying, well, let me go get something similar. And maybe she heard fentanyl, but it was propanol, whatever the name of the drug was.
And remember, Michael Jackson was poisoned to death. You know, he did it to himself, but he died from an overdose. And the fact that we're talking about another poisoning type of case, I think Vinny's right. You know, the prosecutor should really hone in on that during the closing arguments.
Yeah, I think it would be a good point to make, because why would you make that up? That's something you wouldn't make up. That had to come from Kouri. And here's some redirect talking about the deal that the housekeeper got, this sort of get out of jail free card.
You repeatedly stress to them how much you love Derek and how much he did not deserve what happened to him.
Correct.
Do you recall testifying yesterday, and again today actually, where detectives said that you could get a big, giant get out of free jail card?
Correct.
After detectives said, do you realize you could get a big get out of jail free card, what did you tell them?
I told them that even if that was the case, I felt like I still needed to step up and take accountability if this is really what happened to Eric.
Okay, does that sound genuine? Do you think she was impacted by the death of Eric?
It doesn't, and I'll tell you why. I mean, so you're telling me that you really have selective morality. I mean, you're going to supply Kouri with this poison, this fentanyl, and that's okay, right? Where, you know, hundreds of thousands of Americans overdose every single year. You're okay with that. But the wrong person dies, and, you're up in arms about that. You know, I may believe her testimony, but I don't believe that part. Give me a break.
I mean, I think she felt bad. There were definitely moments where she seemed way more emotional than Kouri did when talking about Eric. But at the same point, do I think she's going to raise her hand and say, you know what, forget that deal. I want to go pay for what I did. I'm going to go sit in jail for a while. That's not going to happen. So I agree with Josh on that point.
I'm going to just say, you know, behavior is everything. Half of the testimony, she was quirky, cocky, confident, indifferent. And then the other half, she was wiping away fake tears. I feel like she doesn't care. She got what she needed to get, and that was immunity. And at the end of the day, she's not going to probably see, if mark me if I'm wrong, another day in jail off of this case. Now she just gets to just kind of walk away and be, you know, hopefully sober, but also at the same time indifferent.
Yeah. All right, we've got more to get to. Like I said, that whole chain, right? Up next, we're going to hear from the supplier. What did he say? Did he remember supplying fentanyl to the housekeeper? Plus, coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates blood on the property, a home treated as a crime scene. What unfolded in the final hours before Nancy Guthrie vanished? Tonight, we investigate.
This is the story of the Richins. Eric, a father of 3, met an untimely end, and Kouri, his widow, wrote a children's book on grief.
She's also charged now with his murder.
He was faced with betrayal and terror.
I know her innocence.
Is their story a tragic romance?
Or a twisted tale of grief?
The truth will come out.
The Grief Author Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Are you testifying pursuant to 3 grants of immunity?
I know that there's immunity. I don't know how many of them. Yes.
Understand. Are you aware of immunity from Summit County?
Yes.
From Salt Lake County?
Yes.
And from the federal government?
Yes.
Did she tell you what would happen if you weren't honest?
That the immunity would be void, or so that I could potentially be charged with a crime.
There's the supplier. This is the one who provided the drugs, the lethal drugs, according to prosecutors, to the housekeeper, who gave them to Kouri, who then smashed them up and put them inside that drink that killed her husband, Eric. So let's take a listen to some of the direct, some of the cross. Robert Crozier is his name, and he's an admitted drug dealer.
You know who Nicole Cummings is?
I do.
Who is she?
Excuse me. She is a girl that I lived with for a couple of months at the end of 2021.
Did there come a time in early 2022 when she contacted you about a friend of hers?
Yes.
What did she say to you?
She asked me if I would talk to her friend, I don't remember her name, and get some Roxies for her, the oxycodone.
Did you contact Nicole Cummings' friend?
I think Nicole asked her if she could give her my number, and then she contacted me. But I think that's how that went.
Did you ultimately speak with her?
Yes.
Did you text with her?
I think it was mostly phone calls, but there might have been some text. I don't know. That was 4 years ago.
Sure. When you spoke or texted with her, what did she ask for?
As far as I remember, she was asking for Roxies, for the oxycodone.
Did she identify what she was asking for by any label other than Roxy's? Did you set up to sell to her?
I set up to meet her in Draper.
Did you set up to meet her at a Maverick in Draper?
Yes.
That time in early 2022, you would not have been telling Carmen Lauber, here, these are fentanyl.
No, I didn't have a fentanyl plug at that time. Like, I didn't know anybody that sold fentanyl at that time.
All right. And you said if you were asked for blues, that to you that meant what?
Roxies.
Roxies. Because before fentanyl became really well known, a lot of oxycodones were blue.
Yeah, and they were the M30s, like from the manufacturers. And I think that's why whoever makes those now, the fentanyl ones, they made them, they look just like the Roxies, because people were taking, a lot of people were addicted to Roxy 30s at that time. So they made them look exactly like that. And that's why people were dying, because they were thinking they were taking a Roxy and they were taking a fentanyl that looked exactly the same, but color might have been a little different.
Do you recall a meeting with prosecutors in this case in April of 2025 to discuss your testimony?
I do.
And that was before you met with myself and Mr. Bertram in September of 2025?
Yeah. Yes.
And at that meeting, did you tell them then that you never did sell fentanyl to Carmen Lauber?
I told them that I'm pretty sure that I sold her Roxies and not fentanyl.
Robert, I want you to look at the jury. I want you to tell them, are you telling the truth here today?
Yes, I am telling the truth.
All right, what just happened? What just happened here, Josh? What happened here?
Well, I mean, you're hearing inconsistent statements, of course. I see what the prosecutors want to do with this witness, right? They want to bolster Laubner's testimony that she supplied the defendant with fentanyl. But again, in a poison case, it's all about the acquisition of the poison and the administration of that poison. So it does corroborate, kinda, if you parse through his testimony, that he supplied her with fentanyl, although he tends to go back and forth about what he remembers and what he did.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to concede this fentanyl, right? That I'm selling these Roxies, these blues, and these oxycodone. Claudia, what is going on here? Does he just not remember? Does he think he sold one thing and maybe he sold something else? Or did he not sell fentanyl?
Well, I think the thing that's interesting about this is one of the reasons that there have been so many overdose deaths is because fentanyl was laced into other drugs. And so people didn't know they were taking fentanyl at all. They thought they were taking oxycodone or OxyContin or whatever. So I don't really see this as a problem for the prosecution. I see it as maybe he thought he was selling one thing and it was laced with something else. I mean, he seems slightly more together than the last witness. And I mean, at the very end, he told the jury he was telling the truth, Vinny. So obviously we have to believe him because he told us he was telling the truth. But I think it's very possible that there was fentanyl in what he was selling, and maybe he didn't know that. And so he's telling the truth. Two things can be true at the same time. He's telling the truth, but there was fentanyl in what he sold.
What does your gut tell you here, Holland, about this guy? Is he knowingly selling fentanyl, not knowingly selling fentanyl, or just not selling it at all?
I gotta always do like both sides of the coin here. It's a personal story for me, which I know people hate that I always share a personal story. I have two very close people to me. One's daughter died of fentanyl. She thought she was taking Molly. Another one died in her bathroom and she was a nurse. The very personal stories. This is a very serious conversation. On the flip coin, this guy is giving me terrible actor, terrible mafioso, got off immunity and what have you. Now, the only thing is, if he was not the head, right? We talk about rotting from the head down. maybe they were going for the bigger fish in this case. So he is going to say whatever has to be said. He's going to do whatever has to be done. He's immune, and he's just a bad actor all the way around. I just was listening to him, and I'm thinking to myself, no, you're getting away with something because they're going after something bigger. And it's a typical, Hollywood story. You can't write this better than what this is happening. Unfortunately, they casted the wrong guy up on the stand. I didn't find him very believable. I found him very personable to try to fit a narrative that some really bad writer wrote. And that's all that I got from it.
Yeah, and Josh, isn't that the challenge prosecutors always have? Because when you're a prosecutor, you don't pick your witnesses, right? It's not like you go, who do I want to testify for me? Oh, I'll take, this pillar of the community. No, the witnesses are chosen by the defendant. Like, the defendant introduces all these people into it. So you get the housekeeper on drugs. The housekeeper brings us this guy, and then prosecutors got to try to present this in front of a jury and sell the case. Josh, that's the challenge that people don't realize that happens in so many different cases. The prosecution's case looks terrible because all the people associated with the defendant are terrible people.
Yeah, and there's no way that this witness presented himself this way to the prosecution when they were preparing him for his testimony. No prosecutor in their right mind would put on that witness the way that he testified today. I'm sure that the prosecution is regretting the fact that they put him on. They didn't need him, frankly. I think there's enough circumstantial evidence to win the case. I mean, the victim died of fentanyl. I mean, we don't have to argue about what the poison is, right? I mean, if you believe that the maid gave or sold the fentanyl to Kouri, it's game over. Like, you didn't need this guy. And now he's creating some reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
And I think self-inflicted move.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing prosecutors should always tell the jury is, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I don't get to pick my witnesses. They were all picked by her. She's the one that picked them. They're her friends, the people she associated with. I'm sorry I was pointing at you, Josh. I wanted to point over there. But anyway. All right, Think Tank, stay with us. When we come back, we're going to switch gears, take you to Georgia. It's a school shooting case, but the school shooter's not on trial. It's his father for murder for the school shooting. Even though he wasn't there, he took the stand today. We'll show you what happened.
Now, you knew he was violent. You believed he needed inpatient psychiatric treatment. You knew he was paranoid about his teacher. You knew he was violently opposed to going to school. But you gave him a gun, and you never restricted his access to it, did you?
And that question really encompasses the prosecution's case against Colin Gray, the father of an alleged school shooter in Georgia. His son hasn't even been on trial yet, Colt Gray. But Colin is on trial. He's charged with murder, took the stand in his own defense. Let's take a look at some of his testimony.
Did he ever use the gun to threaten you or any of the children?
Right. So, in these disagreements, this is the thing I need people to understand. The gun was a thing that him and I used to bond with, and I was very clear on the rules. Right. No loaded guns in the house ever, and he abided by those rules. He respected the weapon. We didn't have them in a safe. We didn't, have locks on them as we've all seen here today. But I'm telling you that he had a healthy respect for weapons. They stayed where I told them to stay. And in the heat of the moment, whether it was arguing with me or arguing with his mom, arguing or bull rushing, he never once made a threat to me or his sisters or brother or anybody that I know of going for the gun.
Or did he ever indicate to you that he wanted to hurt anybody?
No, sir.
Did he ever indicate to you that he wanted to do a school shooting.
Oh, no, sir.
Did he ever talk to you about any obsession that he had with school shooters?
No, sir.
We've seen this big poster of newspaper articles and photographs of various and sundry people. Did you see that in his room at any time?
I did not see that poster.
If you can remember any red flag or anything that Colt did that would make you believe that he would ever be capable of doing this act?
No, I struggle with it every day. I've never seen that video until yesterday. You know, he's a good kid. You know, he wasn't perfect, nor was I. But he did do something that heinous. Like I don't know if anybody could ever see that kind of evil. And it's like the Colt I knew, the relationship I had. There's this whole other side of Colt I didn't know existed. So, no.
Was everything you did for Colt, did you try to placate him and try to make him okay?
I did. I just wanted him okay.
Okay, this prosecution of this father is an aggressive prosecution. This is new territory. Yes, we saw it in Michigan with the Oxford school shooter and those parents. This situation, slightly different, but it's in Georgia. Some people are like, yes, throw the book at him. He bought him a gun, end of story. But is that the end of the story? Let's bring in our think tank. Still with us, Josh Colesroot, Claudia King, and Holland Reed. Claudia, why don't you start us off here on this father trying to explain himself and trying to explain his perspective in the house raising this child who clearly had extreme demons, and dad saying, I didn't realize it.
I mean, you feel bad for the dad in one sense, but then you have to look at everything. How did he not see the newspaper articles and whatnot on his son's bedroom wall? How did he not take a stronger stance when police showed up and said, your son has been threatening this, that, and the other? Like, I think he had his head buried in the sand, and it's incredibly unfortunate because by doing that, now we have 4 people dead and however other many people were injured. And I just want to make a quick point, Vinny, because a lot of people have been talking about how this dad is charged with murder and why is that? Well, in Georgia, second-degree murder is not like other states' murder. It has to do with victims under the age of 18 and some type of negligence or disregard for child safety. So I just wanted to make that clear. You know, I feel bad that dad had to go through all of this, but he could have done more, and he just chose not to. I think he wanted to be his son's friend, his buddy, instead of his dad, and that's where he failed, in my opinion.
Well, you know, it's not about whether or not it's not about whether or not he should have done more. You know, that's not the standard. The standard is what he actually knew, not what he could have known. And not only that, but it has to be actionable. So what that means is that he had to have knowledge that his son would commit mass murder, really, that day. And I mean, under these facts, it seems absurd because why would the father live with his son if he knew his son was going to commit mass murder, which also means that he could have also committed murder against the father? It doesn't make sense about actual knowledge. Now, the dad is certainly guilty of a lot of things here. However, to say that he had actual knowledge under these facts, they just don't have it. The only thing they have is the Discord server situation, which occurred 14 to 16 months prior to the mass murder. And here's a legal conundrum for you, Vinny. What if, this is just a hypothetical, that Colt is acquitted of murder, that he's not guilty? Does that mean that that Colin, if he's convicted, is not guilty too on appeal? I mean, they should have waited for the Colt case to be litigated first before going after the father, because Colt, in this case, doesn't have the presumption of innocence.
Holland?
Vinny, this is one of those hard spaces for me because I can argue both sides of the coin from a viewer's perspective. Is this a human parental blind spot, or is this criminal neglect, and is this something that, as we're watching, needs to be prosecuted? First and foremost, you have a father that clearly, just because you are biologically able to become a father doesn't mean you have the capabilities to oversee and supervise parental responsibility over the course of middle school, high school, mental illness, or what have you. We see that all the time in the news. That's one point. The other point is, this is giving me Minority Report vibes, the movie, if you're familiar with Tom Cruise, is that, are we prosecuting the lack of prediction? Like, you predict something. This person is not a psychic. He couldn't decide that day if his son was going to commit mass murder. This is a culture in Georgia, which I'm not a fan of, the gun culture, but it is a culture in the state of Georgia where they were hunters and people do buy their kids gun and teach them gun safety. So I take that into account only to just argue the sides of the coin, is where nobody can predict. I know plenty of parents that buy their children guns and do not ever think for 1 second that their child is going to go in to create mass murder of any kind. At the same time, he did have so many warning signs there. But I think as a parent, you see the best in your child. You ignore the worst when you don't know what to do sometimes. He expressed that on the stand. Do I agree with a lot of the things that he said when it came down to, he was a little arrogant, right? But at the same time, there's two sides of this, and this is what's going to play out.
Yeah, big day on Monday. Big night tonight. Josh Colesrue, Claudia King, Holland Reed, thank you so much. When we come back, folks, something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, the search for Nancy Guthrie intensifies. New video evidence has now surfaced. Is the break in the case close? Tonight, we investigate.
This is the story of the Richins. Eric, a father of 3, met an untimely end, and Kouri, his widow, wrote a children's book on grief.
She's also charged now with his murder.
He was faced with betrayal and terror.
I know her innocence.
Is their story a tragic romance?
Or a twisted tale of greed?
The truth will come out.
The Grief Author Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board. Blind justice. This is a shocking story. It's a before and after picture. The before is what you're looking at with 2 eyes. A man is arrested for murdering another man, and then after he's arrested, gouges out his own eyes. That's Robert Keller. He's been found competent to stand trial, but will use an insanity defense. Competency, insanity, 2 different standards. All right, folks, take a look at your screens. We have a missing child who needs your help tonight. This is Malia Trujillo, missing out of Alb, New Mexico, just 16 years old. If you see Malia, pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference, 911, 1-800-LOST, or you can call the New Mexico State Police. Numbers on the screen. Don't go anywhere with another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.